This podcast is hosted on podhome.fm, the most modern podcast hosting platform. Podhome offers unlimited episodes and podcasts, and unlimited use of Podhome AI, which generates transcripts, clips, chapters, title suggestions, show notes, and much more. And all of that for just $15.99 a month or $185 per year. That's a steal. So go to podhome.fm and start your 30-day trial now. And enjoy the show with Joe.
Transmitting live from the Asylum Studios, deep in the bowels of Southwest Texas. It's the Joe Rooz Show. The show where we talk about anything and everything. Where nothing is sacred, nothing is watered down, and nothing is PC.
Alrighty. Hey folks, it is Wednesday, the 25th of February, 2026. I am Joe Rooz, and it is great to be with you once again, transmitting live at the Asylum and doing the best we can to bring you the best quality talk radio we could muster without all the bluster. Welcome to the Joe Rooz Show. All right, well, so 3 days in a row using the more low-key intro, and I think it will see its last use on Friday's show. I like it. It's great, but it's a little too mellow for me. So we'll fix that for the next week. All righty. Well, guys, I hope you had an opportunity to check out the show from last night. We had a really great conversation with Paul Granger. Super smart guy, really knows his stuff. And it was nice. It was a good conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys are able to check it out. If you haven't yet, just head over to Rumble. Check it out on Rumble on our channel there at Joe Rooz, or go to YouTube and check it out on YouTube at Joe Rooz on that as well, or wherever you get your podcasts. No matter where you go, we're there. So check it out. Really good show. Please go check it out. And if you do check it out, make sure that you like the show and leave a comment. Let us know what you're thinking. You know, tonight, what we're going to do is tonight we are going to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit on one of the most powerful systems in this country, the criminal justice system. You know, most people believe that that justice is fair, justice is blind, and justice is balanced. But what if that's really not the full story? My guest tonight has spent over 35 years inside America's courtrooms, first as a prosecutor, then as a defense attorney. And he says that the reality behind justice may really surprise you. He's a trial lawyer, a trial attorney, law professor, and the author of Unequal Justice. James Porfido joins us tonight to reveal what really happens when your fate is decided in court. But before we bring in James, we are going to do some quick housekeeping stuff here, the usual stuff. So if you don't mind, please take a look over here at our website, joerooz.com, joerooz.com. And when you get there, have a look around, check it all out. Put a lot of work into it, so we're very proud of it. So make sure you look it over. And then look for that contact form. Open up that little pancake in the upper right and open up that web form. Send us over any questions, comments, cares, concerns that you might have. Maybe you have a complaint. You shouldn't, but maybe you do. You can drop it right there. Any suggestions maybe for a topic of discussion you'd like us to have on the show, or a guest that you'd like us to try to get. That's the place to do it. Drop it there in the contact form, send it over to us. Now, but if you don't like to use web forms, which is fine, I'm not a big fan of web forms either. I tend to get a lot of spam after I use them. You could always email me directly at info@joerooz.com. That's info@joerooz.com. Or you can leave a comment right down there below if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube. Very easy to do, and we love to see the comments, so please make sure you do that. Another thing we ask you to do, please, as well, is to like, subscribe, and share the show with your friends, your family, your followers. Set it out across your social media. Let people know that we're here. And by doing those things, you help boost the algorithm, which is the key to any kind of podcast success. So please do that. Like, subscribe, and share with your friends, your family, and your follower. Also, don't forget that this is a live show, weeknights, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We have our crypto show with our resident crypto psychic, Marissa Lee, every other Saturday at noon. And then, of course, we have our Sunday show, the Bible study show, at 2 p.m. on Sunday afternoons. So plenty of opportunities to catch the show, and please make use of it. We really would appreciate it. And, again, hit that like button, subscribe, follow, share it, whatever you have to do to help us make this whole thing here grow. All right. Now, tonight's connection is brought to us by Podmatch. Podmatch is it's the place where most podcast hosts and guests go to ease up the workload in getting their podcast put together. You know, most podcast hosts and guests spend hours researching connections, coordinating interviews, working on administrative tasks while really only spending literally 10% of their time on what really matters, and that's producing quality podcast episodes and shows for you. Podmatch enables podcast guests and hosts to reclaim their time through automations, streamline processes so they can focus on creating content that really serves its listeners. Now, if you want more information about it, just head over to podmatch.com/member/Joe. That's podmatch.com/member/Joe. That's the profile page for our show. You can sign up to Podmatch right through there, and you never know. You might end up being a guest on our show, which we would love to have you on. So check it out, podmatch.com/member/Joe. All right. Well, tonight on our show, we are joined by James Porfido, a certified criminal trial attorney with over 35 years in America's courtrooms, first as a prosecutor, then as a defense lawyer, a law professor, and a book author. James has appeared on national TV as a legal analyst on high-profile cases, and his book, Unequal Justice, digs into how our court system really works behind the scenes, where the scales often favor the state over the individual. He's here tonight to break down what justice actually looks like for the accused and why most people have it all wrong. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I was looking forward to this. I was looking over your profile and, really very interesting. And a lot of people don't really understand how the criminal justice system works. I understand it from a different perspective. I served in law enforcement for 20 plus years. So I see it from that side of it. I don't really see it often from the opposite side of the table. So I was really intrigued when I read your profile. And so I'm really looking forward to getting into this conversation. But, of course, before we do that and before we get into all the serious stuff, I want to ask you just a couple of quick questions, icebreakers. So what's something that you pretend to understand but really don't?
Do
you wish I would have gave you the question ahead of time?
Yeah, maybe. Biohacking is certainly one because there's so much terminology and things I just can't follow, but I think I understand it, but I don't.
Biohacking. Okay. That's an interesting one. I'm going to try to do something here with your mic audio because you're kind of low. Let me see if I can bring you up a little bit. There we go. Let's see how that works. All right. A little bit. Yep.
Okay.
But do I hear an echo now? No. Okay. So, next question is, what's one thing that people would be surprised to learn about you in the first 5 minutes?
That I've run 14 marathons.
Wow. Really? The New York City Marathon?
6 times.
Okay. So which other ones did you run? Boston?
I ran Boston. I've run the Jersey Shore. I've run Philadelphia. I've done Washington, D.C. Marine Corps twice. Let's see, which ones am I missing? I said Philly. Scranton. I've done Scranton. I think that makes 12, 14. I think I'm up to 14. I think. I always lose count, but I'm up to 14 now.
Well, 12 or 14 is an accomplishment either way.
Well, 14. It's definitely 14. I just don't know if I've covered all of them.
I'm saying that's what I mean. Whether you mentioned 12 of them or you mentioned all 14, it's still an accomplishment. That's amazing. I forgot that the Jersey Shore had its own marathon.
That was my qualifying time to get into Boston, actually. I ran it in under 3.5 hours. It was my fastest marathon ever. Probably will never see it again.
Wow, that's amazing. I wasn't expecting that, but that's great. Awesome. So James, what first drew you into law and the criminal justice field?
All right. Well, I always had a fascination with law. I mean, even as a kid, rooting for the underdog, and I think I was generally argumentative as a kid. So maybe this was a calling. I don't know, but I always say that if I wasn't an attorney, I would probably be an actor.
Sometimes I look at attorneys and I see them as actors to begin with, so it probably wouldn't be much of a transition.
Probably not. I always said I'd make a really good actor on TV.
Yeah.
or a really good lawyer on TV. I'd much rather play a lawyer than be a lawyer.
Yeah, that's the catch. I got you. So why don't you walk us through the early years, your early days at, federal intern, clerk, prosecutor. What shaped your courtroom approach?
Sure. So, yeah, federal intern while I was in law school, I actually did an internship with a federal district court judge in New Jersey. And it was probably crazy to do, but I would come home from Connecticut on a Thursday night and I'd have to be there on a Friday, an all day Friday. So it was a lot of commuting. So I had to drive from Connecticut back to Jersey, and then I'd have to go to Trenton, which is where the internship was. And then after that, I did a clerkship with a Superior Court judge in Sussex County, New Jersey, which is kind of a rural place. And then coincidentally or ironically, we ended up in Morris County because we were part of the same vicinage. And court terminology means they're joined or connected. So
Okay.
the judge got transferred to Morris County fortuitously from me because that's where I grew up. And I ended up getting a job as a prosecutor because they were hiring. And I had some experience in family court, which was with domestic violence and family juvenile delinquency matters.
Mhm.
And that's where I was in the prosecutor's office. Then I rose through the ranks and ultimately became the head of sex crimes and child abuse and vehicular homicide. And then one case kind of changed everything that I had prosecuted. It's really a tragic story. It was a vehicular homicide where a mom was killed and the husband was an attorney, and he was instrumental in changing the laws in New Jersey to what the laws are today, where mandatory sentences must be given if you drive drunk or recklessly and kill someone. There's a mandatory sentence of 3 years minimum state prison, and there was not that minimum when the case came about. And he was instrumental in changing the laws in New Jersey, and those are the laws that exist today. And he was an attorney himself, and he started a foundation speaking to high school kids or students about the dangers of drugs and alcohol, and awareness about being a driver or passenger. And he was speaking to a lot of high school students throughout the state of New Jersey. And sadly, he was jogging near the site where his wife was killed, and he himself was struck by a car and killed.
Wow.
So the board that he had created needed a speaker to devote to these presentations that were being done at high schools. So I left my job as a prosecutor and became just a defense attorney at that time, and really wasn't thinking about focusing as a defense attorney, but ultimately that's where I ended up. And I spoke to probably 77,000 high school students in New Jersey over a period of about 2 years.
Wow. Wow. And but how did all of that shape your courtroom approach?
Well, I mean, there's like two sides to it, and that's kind of the way the book was written. There's a side where I'm a prosecutor, and then there's the other side where I'm on the other side of the courtroom and I'm a defense attorney. And I just noticed a dramatic shift, just going from, representing the state to representing the accused.
Okay.
So that kind of foundation created at the prosecutor's office gave me the experience in a courtroom and the confidence to speak to jurors, to look them in the face and speak to them conversationally and really connect with them on some level.
I got you.
And I just carried that into my defense practice.
Wow. It's such a when you hear the backstory to a lot of the laws that are in place, and you hear a story like you just relayed to us, I mean, that's amazing. And then ultimately to be in the same place where your wife was killed tragically, and then you yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wow. Wow. That's all I could say to that.
It was crazy, really crazy. He was an attorney in the city, and he worked with Prosecutor, which was the firm, very big firm, and they do a lot of NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball contracts for players, and they do a lot of pensions, things like that. That's what they focus on. It's a very big firm in New York City, Prosecutor Rooz, and he was a partner with that firm.
Oh, wow. Well, looking back, what was you say is the biggest turning point in your legal career?
Well, certainly that case really changed a lot. It really fundamentally shifted my career trajectory, because I probably would have been a career prosecutor, but I was really I wanted to be a prosecutor, the head prosecutor, where like we have what they have in the cities, it's a district attorney, where you're the head prosecutor. And I always saw myself in that role, being able to run an office and be an administrator and, and occasionally pick up a case and try a case and go into a courtroom and be comfortable enough to do that and kind of lead by example. So that was certainly my plan. And when this event happened involving the death of the father, I left the prosecutor's office and I actively campaigned to be the prosecutor, and I didn't realize it was so political. And I had to, become very quickly involved in politics. And I was actually up for the appointment 2 times in 2001 and 2012. And it's an appointment by the governor. So New Jersey is very different than many states. Many states it's elected. You have to run a campaign and run for office as a judge or as a DA or a prosecutor. In New Jersey, it's an appointment through the governor. So it's a lot like the presidential executive powers. The president has that same ability to appoint people to these cabinet positions. It's similar to New Jersey in a lot of ways. These appointments are the power of the governor. He can put people in judges' positions and prosecutor positions throughout the state.
Oh, I gotcha. So what's something that I guess I'm going to use a word here, lay people don't know about being a trial attorney?
Well, it's obviously very stressful, and especially if you're representing someone accused of a serious crime where they're facing incarceration for a significant period of time and charged with serious criminal offenses. So I think people generally know it's stressful, but not to the degree that, it keeps you up at night. And if you take it really seriously, which I think a lot of defense attorneys do, it becomes very personal. You're personally affected by it. And I think some of us have become part-time psychologists in addition to being attorneys, because we really have to get inside the head of the people we represent and figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, I'm sure it would help to know how they think, going into a trial. I'm sure it would help. When did you first start to realize or start to sense that the scales of justice may not actually be completely balanced?
Well, I think it was like a slow progression, but I started to notice that right away, the same judges that I appeared in front of as a prosecutor, now I'm a defense attorney, I'm appearing in front of the same judges, and I don't have the same level of respect. I feel like I had lost the credibility. I just was viewed very differently, and I felt like the scales had shifted in favor of the prosecutor. And I don't think I realized that as a prosecutor that I had those benefits, that I was being favored. I was too naive to see that. But certainly being on the other side, I recognized that things were very different. I didn't have the resources. Clients would be charged with crimes, and quite frankly, they are limited in the defenses that they can present because it's costly to have expert witnesses and things like that. So you're limited in some of the defenses you can raise just simply by money. And a lot of times clients just didn't have the money to fund litigation because prosecutors, and this is something else I learned, is that prosecutors could beat you down, quite frankly. They could wear you out. They could consume your retainer. They could make you come to court unnecessarily and needlessly for senseless appearances, and it would consume the retainer agreement, and eventually the client runs out of money and they bankrupt the client. They bankrupt the attorney that's fighting very hard for the client, ends up having to withdraw from the case. It became more and more common as time went on that was typically happening. And it to me was a strategy that was utilized. If a prosecutor did not want to have to deal with you as the defense attorney, this was just a strategy that they used, where you could go to court 12, 13, 14 times and not accomplish anything, and be looking to go to trial saying, my client is innocent and they're innocent until proven guilty according to our law, and they want the right to trial. They want to go to trial. And unfortunately, the judges would side with prosecutors, and they would allow them these delays or adjournments that were, quite frankly, unnecessary.
Wow.
And as much as you pushed to go to trial, there was a lot of pushback.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because my next question was going to be, do you think that the legal system is set up on the prosecutorial side to, in some ways, intentionally bankrupt a defendant?
I do believe that. From my own experience, I can say without a doubt, I had many prosecutors know that they did not want to face me as an adversary because I was on my game, let's say. Like I was, I left the prosecutor's office as the head of sex crimes and child abuse and vehicular homicides. So certainly I was not someone that was like an inexperienced attorney. I certainly knew my way around the courtroom. I knew criminal law very well from both sides. Mm-hmm. And if they did not want to deal with me, they would exercise that process where they could get me out of the case. And It became very commonplace.
Well, and that's so unfortunate, and it's to me it's really unfair as well. I mean, you are entitled to your day in court, and playing these games within the system isn't that a step on your constitutional rights as a defendant?
Well, most definitely, because the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution guarantees you the right to counsel.
Right.
That in and of itself doesn't really mean a lot. Right to counsel, what does that mean? Having a warm body standing next to you, someone that's just going to stand there and try to articulate some of the arguments. No, I think that the Sixth Amendment guarantees you the right to capable and competent and experienced counsel. I would say there's that caveat to it. It's not just having an attorney next to you. And quite frankly, that process was eliminating that Sixth Amendment right, in my view. I mean, I found that time and time again.
And I would imagine too, I mean, this may seem like a silly point, somebody with your experience, but with court-appointed attorneys talking about the Sixth Amendment, just having that warm body next to you, the court-appointed attorneys, to me at least, I mean, I understand, the financial need for it. If you can't afford one, I understand that. But are they really fighting for the defendant, or are they just there, just to, like you say, just a warm body next to the defendant to just to satisfy the minimum criteria of the Sixth Amendment right?
It's a great question, because when someone is appointed a public defender, there is an office of the public defender in each county in New Jersey that sets up a defense for the accused who cannot afford counsel. Now, some of them are excellent attorneys. They know their stuff and they're good trial attorneys. Then there are others that are not so good, and I think that that's true of the legal profession, quite frankly. There are a lot of attorneys that profess to be criminal attorneys, and they're not very good. And then there are those that are very good, that are passionate about it and really take the time to gain the knowledge and understanding. So, yeah, I can't say as a whole, but it would depend. And I would view that as a case-by-case basis, quite frankly, looking at the individual that was appointed to represent someone. And certainly there were others, like I could tell you, like certain attorneys had reputations, and certain public defenders would have reputations, like they would be either lazy or they would want to plead the case out. They wouldn't want to go to trial. And that's the same as just general criminal attorneys.
Probably wouldn't want to go to trial because their trial skills are not adequate for it.
Well, yeah, that plus it's very, very time consuming, and it's a lot of work, to prepare an opening statement and to think about, how you're going to be examining a witness or bringing in evidence if you're bringing in evidence, or how to counter the evidence that the prosecution is bringing in.
Another thing too about the public defenders, I mean, they are being paid by the state to represent a person that can't afford to do it for themselves. Conflict of interest at all in that?
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because I often thought there was a conflict of interest in the municipal courts, the municipalities where you have your traffic offenses, your relatively minor criminal offenses. And, clients or prospective clients that came to me would be surprised to hear me say, they'd say, I want to go to trial, I want to go to trial. And I'd say, well, you got to be careful what you wish for, because it might not turn out quite the way you think it's going to turn out. Mm-hmm. Just because you think you're innocent, or just because you think that there's not enough evidence to support the conviction or the charges, I'm just gonna break it down for you. The prosecutor, the judge, and the police are all paid from the same place. Do you think that there's a little bit of an imbalance? Do you think that perhaps there's a little bit of sway on one side versus the other? And I'd say, I can tell you, I'll do my level best for you. I'll 110% I'll give you, but I can't guarantee you that, you're going to be found not guilty. That's not a guarantee I can make.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, you can't guarantee outcomes like that. I mean, I think anybody who puts their confidence in an attorney that is guaranteeing to get them off of something, I think needs to have their head examined.
And then you have to also prepare them and say, if it doesn't go your way and we do go to trial, it could become costly, because then you have an appeals process.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
And that's something that you need to consider before you even pull the trigger.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the constitutional side of this, and constitutional rights, because I see in my experiences, the constitutional rights don't always exactly play out the same way in theory and in reality. What do you think about that?
Well, for sure, absolutely. I mean, people really have they think they understand, but they really don't. Like, you can see that day to day, and people's general interactions with law or law enforcement is probably roadside when they get a traffic stop. And how many times do people want to argue with the police officer and tell them I wasn't speeding, or I didn't, blow through that stop sign, or, the light was really yellow when it was red. You're not going to win that argument. I've told people this. I say, you can't win your argument. I've watched so many videos of interactions, with people arguing with police officers, and say that you just weren't going to win your case there. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people believe that they can win their case on the side of the road. And what you're doing basically is you're antagonizing the police officer. And my general rule of thumb is you need to be respectful, polite, and cooperative. And then, let the chips fall where they will, and get yourself a good lawyer to fight the case for you.
Yeah. I can tell you from experience, one of the things that I used to love the most when we would do a traffic stop or any real interaction was the street side attorney. All of a sudden, this person is now an expert in their constitutional rights, and they're an expert in municipal law. They're an expert in the rules and regs of the city and the state, and so on and so forth. And they try to debate this with you. And you're like, look, I am not the person to debate this with. If you want to debate this, you go to court.
And you don't know who you're dealing with. Quite frankly, in all due deference to police officers, not all of them are equipped to deal with people who are antagonistic and rude and
very true
combative. They might not have the experience to deal with those people, and then you have terrible situations happen on the roadside.
No, that's very true. That is absolutely true. Unfortunately, we see a lot of that, play out, and of course, it's all over the media. So you see it. But I do think, though, at the same time, that those incidents that we see that are portrayed, those are far and few between. I think.
Sure. Because I think generally when someone puts a badge on and they're wearing a gun, they understand they have that authority behind them, and they respect that position, and they respect the people that they have to encounter. I feel that way. I mean, I certainly know enough police officers and dealt with them over the years in my experiences on both sides.
So you've analyzed some really high profile cases. What common misconceptions should the audience stop believing?
That's good. Well, I could tell you from O.J. Simpson to Scott Peterson to the Menendez brothers, and I had some involvement in all of those, doing
Really?
some discussion and commentary on them. Um, I just think that maybe people believe that because there's press coverage, that it puts a spotlight and that justice will really be served if there's more attention and focus put on a case, and that's not necessarily true.
Well, I think and that's another issue altogether, as far as like the press coverage and such. I mean,
Sure.
people right now are tried in the court of public opinion long before they even set foot into a courtroom. And I think and with the proliferation of social media and everybody running around with a camera phone, recording everything, I personally think it's going to get harder and harder as time goes by to actually get fair trials because of all of the skewed those random videos that people pop up in their social media accounts and,
Sure.
and just the flood of information that pours out through the social media platforms these days. I think it's going to really get harder and harder to get fair trials.
It sure
I
is.
don't know what the solution is.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at some of the videos today from New York City, some of these people that were throwing snowballs at police officers.
I saw that, yeah.
Things like that, and the mayor saying it's a snowball fight, like downgrading it and minimizing it. And I'm saying, wait a minute. As the mayor, you have a responsibility to those police officers, and you need to stand behind them and say anybody that does that's going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This is not fun and games, which demonstrates to me that he's in over his head. He has no business.
Oh, absolutely.
In that business. And
Absolutely.
I don't mean to talk politics, but that seeing that display and his commentary on that, I was offended by it, and I was just shocked. And if I were a police officer in New York City right now, I would probably be resigning or quitting and trying to get it the heck out of there, because they're not going to be protected or defended by this administration.
Absolutely not. No. And you go back to the video. The mayor may have said it was just a snowball fight. The cops didn't exactly look like they were having a snowball fight.
No,
they did not look like
it didn't look like they were throwing snowballs at other people. It looks like it was all one-sided, and that's not a snowball fight.
All right. I remember
Those are
one
people
clip
attacking police officers.
Yeah, and I remember one part of the video where the cop was walking away, and somebody ran up behind him with a handful of snow.
I saw that.
Basically smacked him in the back of the head with it.
Yeah,
and then,
that's an assault.
Yeah, God forbid that cop would have turned around and drew his weapon after getting hit in the back of the head. God forbid.
Right.
Because then it would have been all the cops' fault.
Absolutely. And that's the problem with the media, is that it focuses, and that would have been redacted, that video, to some point where it doesn't show that. And unfairly. And I think the videos actually are helpful in both sides. I can say from both sides, as a former prosecutor and defense attorney, that the videos are generally helpful. They do shed light on a situation. I've used them to my benefit in the defense of the case, and certainly they've been used against me in the prosecution of a client of mine.
Sure. I mean, when I said earlier about the proliferation of the videos and such in social media, it wasn't necessarily a good or bad. I see it can trend bad because you're not going to get a fair trial, because you're going to get all this skewed information, and maybe I should have been more clear about that. Of edited videos and things that are misleading. Sure. And misconstrued. Video is very helpful. When I was in uniform, we didn't have video yet, but we were using audio. We had audio. We had tape recorders basically in our uniforms, and when we would have a public interaction, we have to turn that thing on, and we were being monitored that way.
Sure.
So I don't know, with video and all that stuff could be manipulated. Every piece of it could be.
Well, I can tell you, Joe, from my experience, I represented a lot of people charged with DWIs, hundreds over the years. And many times a client would come in and say, I absolutely was not drunk. This officer was singling me out. He pulled me over for no real reason. And then we get the videotape and we look at the videotape together, and they couldn't do, they're falling down, they're slurring their words, they're asked to recite the alphabet, and they can't get through D, and it's it's helpful for me to say, this is what the evidence is against you. And I mean, I can only do so much. I'm not a miracle worker, but it's clear to me that you were intoxicated. You couldn't walk a straight line heel to toe. You couldn't raise your foot for 30 seconds. Now, not everybody can do that. They may not have balance. Right. You couldn't, you failed the HGN, or the horizontal gaze nystagmus, which are the 3 standardized field-size sobriety tests. In addition, the officer asked you to put your finger to your nose. You couldn't do that. They gave you many opportunities, and it seems like you failed all of those. So, that helped to persuade them that, look, we need to go there and make the deal that we need to make, and, do mitigation of damages.
Yeah. So, all right, so let's talk about your book, because I told you before the show, I would have loved to have been able to read the book prior to you coming on the show. So what I have is just basically what I got from press release and such. But tell us about the book. The name of the book is Unequal Justice. So tell us about the book, the premise behind the book.
Sure. It's Unequal Justice is a search for truth to balance the scales, which is really, like I was saying, it's kind of written in 2 ways. First, as a young prosecutor and moving up through the ranks, and the many high-profile cases that I prosecuted, some of them very noteworthy. They got a lot of media press and coverage locally, and including vehicular homicide cases like the one that I talked about, where I left the prosecutor's office.
Right.
And then the defense of cases, and seeing a sudden shift in the scales of justice, where I was not quite treated the same way just simply by moving from one counsel table to the other counsel table, and appearing in front of the very same judges I appeared in front of as a prosecutor, and seeing things that were very different. So I wrote the book from that perspective, like from both sides. And I did a lot of high profile cases on the defense side as well. And I talked about a lot of those and some of the complications involved with the rights of the accused, in particular cases that I handled, where it was necessary to have hearings and full-blown testimony, trials where I've represented a priest, and I represented 2 priests in my career as a defense attorney. And one of the first cases I handled was representing a Catholic priest, and I talked about that experience. And then later on in my defense career, I represented another priest, and that case went to trial, and some of the interesting issues that came up during the course of that case. But then I looked at it from the perspective of COVID, how COVID really changed the law and the system dramatically.
Yes.
And I felt that it was very unfair. I had people sitting in detention, waiting for their day in court, waiting for trials, and everything was basically suspended or put on a hold. And we were doing everything like what we're doing right now through, a Zoom platform or video conferencing. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't even allowed into the jail to see clients. I had to call them at night. And I talked about that situation, certainly in one particular case where I represented a young man who was accused of a date rape. He was a college student, and he knew the young woman, and she had accused him of getting her intoxicated and taking advantage of her. And she really wasn't a credible witness or victim in the case. And I kind of knew that from the beginning, and I was arguing on his behalf to try to get him out. Right. And he was really psychologically traumatized by the fact that he was incarcerated, because his whole life basically come to an end. And I fought very hard to get him out, and ultimately went to the appellate courts, and he remained in custody for over a year. And ultimately, the family felt that I wasn't arguing aggressively enough or passionately enough to get him out, although I was doing everything in my power. And they went to another attorney. And what I had predicted would happen did happen. And, I certainly wasn't patting myself on the back, but I said, this young lady is not a credible witness, and there's a lot of problems in this case. Particularly the way she was interviewed, there were some fundamental violations that were done by the police in terms of allowing third parties into the room to be present during the interrogation and to have input and asking questions, which is not allowed.
That's right. Yeah.
And clearly would never have made it past a motion by the court or an application to suppress that statement that the young woman had given regarding being a victim in the case. And she had claimed that she had consumed a number of White Claws, but she really was not credible because she had created a profile for herself on an OnlyFans site. And I didn't mean to degrade her or denigrate her in any way, but I said to the prosecutor, these are issues that we need to address. And they did not want to hear it. Ultimately, the young woman, I was let go in the case, and another attorney took over for a very substantial retainer. I gave him my file with all my notes, everything. And true to what I said is that this case will dissolve itself at some point. And the young lady became an escort in Florida, was working for an escort agency and encountered a John. And she found out that he was married, and then she tried to extort money from him. He had a confrontation with her and she stabbed him.
Oh, wow.
And what happened to the case with this young man that I had represented previously? It was thrown out. It was dismissed. And he was released after serving a year and a half waiting for his day in court.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah.
It's a little pivot from the book discussion, but I guess in the same vein. Okay, so false accusations like that, and we see the damage that it does to the innocent party of the whole thing, the person that the false accusation is made against. Do you think that the people that make these false accusations and try to push it all the way through the court system to try to ruin this person's life for whatever reason should face criminal prosecution?
Oh, I most definitely believe that. I believe that there should be very serious consequences for people that fabricate charges against someone or falsely accuse someone of a crime. And the sad part about it, in my opinion, is that there are guardrails along the way. A good prosecutor can see through that. A good investigation by the police would reveal this. A judge that is willing to challenge the prosecutor on a case would be able to see through that. That, in my opinion, was not happening in several cases where it should have happened.
But you just think about it, that this person now spent a year and a half, you said, in jail, and you said he had some trauma after that. Just the idea that you could just flippantly throw out an accusation like that and wreck somebody's life. That's, and I'm sure
she claimed I was drunk and he did not have my consent. That was what the case was all about. That's what it boiled down to, was that she claimed she was intoxicated, that she voluntarily intoxicated herself. It's not like he forced this alcohol on her. She drank it on her own. And I'm not justifying under any circumstance saying, and I'm very respectful of victims' rights. I represent a lot of crime victims in some very serious cases throughout the years. And so I'm always mindful about that. But in this particular case, I did not view her as a victim at all. And I did not from day one.
Yeah. I kind of wonder sometimes how many people are actually sitting in jail right now that are actually did not do the things that they were accused of doing on these particular types of situations. And their lives are just completely destroyed. And it's a false accusation.
Sadly so. And I happened to read a book, John Grisham, who writes a lot of novels, of course, and they're usually not about real cases. They're stories.
Right.
And he's a very good writer, but I happened to pick up a book someone had recommended to me. It's called Framed. And it's actually about 12 cases where people were wrongfully arrested, charged, convicted, and sentenced. And ultimately, their convictions were overturned. And these people, I mean, it's heartbreaking to read the book because these people, there was no evidence to support the charges, and there was a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes, like jailhouse snitches, where deals were being made with these lying people that were just trying to better their own interests and willing to say or do anything. You know, that was certainly a recurring theme in many of these cases where they didn't have evidence, or they had counter evidence and they wouldn't bring it forward because they didn't want to let this person, they wouldn't let go of the fact that they had arrested somebody falsely. They just wanted to build the case around this individual, which is very sad.
Yeah, that is absolutely. So I want to get back to your book for a second at this point. So you already described basically what the book is. What's the central message that you're trying to bring out of the book, or with the book?
Well, the central message really was to write the book from a career point of view, to look at it like retrospectively over the period of 35 plus years, being in this circle, let's say, you know, of being a prosecutor in defense. And I felt like I had a pretty unique perspective. You know, I wasn't just a defense attorney. I wasn't just a prosecutor. I had the ability to see both sides. Mm-hmm. So I wrote it from that. But it was all also retrospective, looking at how we could say there's problems that need to be addressed. And a lot of it, quite frankly, it's not a quick fix. It's not an easy, hey, you know, this can be done and everything's great. It's not like that at all. A lot of it has to do with the appointments of judges and prosecutors and those people that occupy those positions, and the experience that they have, and also the backbone they have, quite frankly, because sometimes they do need to stand up and say, hey, this isn't what it looks to be.
Yeah.
And I talk about that a little bit because in New Jersey we had a Criminal Justice Reform Act where we eliminated cash bails.
Yes, I remember.
That was a good thing.
I remember that.
That was supposed to be a great thing because the idea behind it was, we're going to take those people that have committed relatively minor offenses, who have no financial resources and are sitting in jail with $100 bail, you know, for shoplifting or something like that. And we're going to release them, or we're going to not have those people incarcerated. And I think that's a great thing, quite frankly. We shouldn't have people sitting there for minor offenses simply because they don't have the money to raise bail.
Right.
But what happened was the system did not work quite like that. What they developed was, and I have a fundamental problem with this, and it exists today, is they developed an algorithm theory, which is a computer-generated program that spits out some numbers and says what the risk assessment is for someone to be released on the street based upon a crime that they committed or they're accused of committing, and what their background and their history is, and their roots to the community, their ties to the community. And the judge looks at the numbers, and the prosecutor argues the numbers, and invariably the judge accepts the numbers that the prosecutor presents to them. And you could literally stand on your head and say these numbers are not accurate. And you have a very difficult road ahead of you to try to challenge those numbers once they're on that paper. And what I found was that judges were not judging as people. They were looking at a computer sheet, and they were looking at the numbers, and basically they were just following the numbers. And at some point, that's not really what we want judges doing, quite frankly. And certainly we want prosecutors digging a little deeper, but that's the system we have in New Jersey. It's called a public safety assessment, a risk calculation. And it's a mathematical score that is given to the judge on a sheet of paper. And that's what's presented when someone has a detention hearing. And the interesting thing about it is they actually ended up detaining a lot of people that would not have otherwise been incarcerated for instances of domestic violence, relatively minor domestic violence offenses. They were categorized, and those people ended up getting incarcerated or arrested for the crimes that they were charged with.
Wow. Wow. I don't know, man. I'm telling you, there needs to be some. First of all, I think in a lot of cases, I think judges should not be appointed by any established government in the state. I think all judges should be elected to their position by a vote of the people. This way the people can say, all right, you know what, you're not doing the right thing. We're not letting you stay there. Like we here in Texas, we vote for our county judges, we vote for our municipal judges, and and they have to go out there. They have to demonstrate to the community that they have the community's best interest at heart, not some political agenda. And
I tend to agree with you on that to some extent. Now, the problem with that, and there's not a perfect system, whether it's appointed or it's elected, I don't think there's a perfect way.
Oh, no,
but
not at all.
If you look at that model, for example, by election, you have to run a campaign. Well, how do you run a campaign? You've got to raise money.
Right.
How do you raise money? You've got to go to donors. And those donors are going to be looking for favors from you when you get on the bench. And you have to have the integrity to say, I cannot sit on this case and decide in fairness.
Agreed. Because
I have a conflict of interest. And judges are not doing that, sadly.
Yeah, that's true.
Unfortunately, I can tell you that it happened in Luzerne County in Pennsylvania with a judge, quite frankly, who was just pardoned by Joe Biden as he walked out the door from his presidency. And not to get political, but this judge, and if I told you this, I'm not making this up, the judge was incarcerating these young juvenile delinquents, putting them in a detention facility for relatively minor offenses, things that they never would have been incarcerated for. Why was he doing that? He was benefiting from these private institutions where they were these detention facilities where these kids were being held. Many of these kids committed suicide. And ultimately it was revealed that the judge was financially invested in the detention facilities, and that's why he was sending these kids there. He ultimately was convicted, and he ended up being sentenced to a significant period of time, and his sentence was commuted by Joe Biden on his way out the door. And that's someone, quite frankly, who abused his position and cost lives of innocent children, in my opinion, that should never have experienced what they experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we know that it really wasn't Joe Biden who did it. We know that it was some staffer.
No, we know that today.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. Some staffer with the auto pen doing that. But I would just be curious though to know what the rationale behind the pardon would have been. You know what I mean?
I would love to know that. I'd love to know that, how an individual like that gets pardoned. And I think you could easily Google that. I don't know the judge's name. Unfortunately, I think he had an Italian last name.
So what kind of legal reforms would you put into place tomorrow if you could?
Wow, that would be a great question, and one in which I would want to say having a pool of attorneys that are capable and competent, reforms in the prosecution of cases. There's so many. It's systemic. It's like a top down. It's not just one quick fix.
Sure.
I think the appointments of the prosecutors and the judges is first and foremost, and really evaluating cases fairly and impartially, and recognizing that position. And I always say that judges need to be fair, impartial, detached from the case, and they should not have a vested interest in an outcome. And I think if we start out with that premise, and if prosecutors are interested in seeking out justice, the system can work. It can work,
Yeah.
and it has worked. Not always perfectly. I can't say it works perfectly all the time, but if you go into it with that idea that the prosecutors seek out justice, whatever that justice may be, and sometimes justice is dismissing charges against someone because they were wrongfully accused.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know too many prosecutors that dismiss cases because somebody was wrongfully accused. They would much rather get a disposition on the case and have them plead guilty to a much lesser offense so they can say, we walked away and we did our job.
Sometimes I think that, that their prosecution is always looking for that win. They want that number. They want to keep that percentage and that statistic, and they fight for that more than they do for the truth.
Right. And sometimes they lose that the role and the function that they play, the importance of it, and how important that is to seek out justice and make sure that justice is delivered in every case.
Yeah. So what's the toughest ethical line you've had to walk in your career?
Toughest ethical line really was making decisions as to whether or not there were conflicts, if I had any particular conflicts of interest in a case. And that would generally be a situation where maybe I had represented someone on the other side. And I'm trying to give an example because it didn't come up all that often, but ethically, this would be a dilemma, quite frankly, is that if you represented a husband in a domestic violence case and then the wife was accused of a crime, and the husband came to you and said, hey, I want you to represent my wife. Now, they've reconciled right. Their domestic violence issues. And now I say, wait a minute, I represented your husband, and now I'm supposed to represent you. But in the other proceeding, you were really on the other side of the case, the domestic violence case.
Gotcha.
So I might have a bit of a conflict of interest, and under the rules of professional conduct, I would probably not be able to represent that woman in that particular case. I'd have to say to the husband, you need to find another attorney. I can't do that.
That makes sense. To me, anyway, it makes sense.
Ethically, there were a number of situations where there was, retainers, where retainers were being depleted, where there would be ethical implications as to whether or not you could stay on in the case, of course, and comply with your ethical responsibilities. And I always made it clear that I don't care whether you pay me or not, and I'm still going to be fighting for you. And unfortunately, that obviously came back to bite me in many cases where I was not paid and had to chase after clients for money, and still am owed a substantial amount of money over the years.
I think you're reading my mind, because that was my next question for you. Has there ever been a time where the retainer ran out and you continued on with the case and continued fighting for the client? But you already answered that. So.
Yeah, there were more than a few. With a promise of payment, and just being the person that I am and being invested in the case, I truly believe that this person would uphold their word. And they clearly knew. It wasn't like I was like hiding the ball. It was like, hey, this is how much money's owed, and we need to discuss this, and we need to resolve this. And oh, don't worry, you're going to be paid. You're fighting for me, and you're my best friend. Or you're everything to me. You're my whole world, until you're not.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what's one thing that you would want the listeners to remember after our conversation tonight?
Well, that justice isn't always fair. And justice is defined very differently in different cases. I can tell you that certainly in a homicide case, justice will never be ever delivered. Even bring the accused to a conviction and having them sentenced to the maximum term, it's never going to bring back someone's loved one. And I always viewed that as and I think that the idea was that justice would be delivered, and I think that that's a misconception. In financial crimes, I think there is some form of justice if you can get restitution, like if somebody is, if money is stolen, or there's an embezzlement scheme or something like that, and somebody's ultimately made whole, they still were victimized, but it's not quite the same, and there is some level of justice in that. But justice isn't always fair, and justice is, in my opinion, is a moving target. It's a definition that's always changing.
We have a perfectly imperfect system.
Correct. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's all right. We keep working on it to improve it, and we'll get there someday.
Yeah, we've been working on it for 250 years in the U.S. and we're always working on it. And unfortunately, it's not perfect and it's not always right. And hopefully, it is corrected. And if it's not in a case, that ultimately the appeals process allows for it to be corrected, and that's the idea behind appeals for sure.
Yeah. It's still the best system in the world, though.
It is, and we do have England to thank for it. The common law system that we have was something that we got from England, and we developed, with our own touch and our own flair as far as the constitutional rights that we're afforded, and it is the best system, quite frankly, even though that there are times when it doesn't work 100%.
That's right, perfectly imperfect. So, James, this was a great conversation, man. I really enjoyed this time with you, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here tonight. But before we wrap up, who is somebody that you respect right now, and what are they doing that inspires you?
Oh, geez. Well, I can tell you that. Actually, I can answer that.
Okay.
The young man Hughes that scored the winning goal in the Olympics, I really respect and admire that kid. Losing his teeth like he did and scoring the winning goal. And I got to tell you, I just loved what he had to say. I think it was unifying for our country to hear somebody say they're proud to be an American.
Yes.
And, it brought a tear to my eye, really, to be honest. I think that he's inspirational. I think and he plays for the New Jersey Devils.
There you go. Well, I knew that because we talked before the show, folks. So I'm a New York Rangers fan. He's a Jersey Devils fan, and there's that little rivalry on over there. But that's all right. That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, but what a good kid, and I got to say, as an American, I'm proud to have somebody like that represent our country, and all
Absolutely.
of those kids. They went out there and they played a hell of a game, and they brought home the gold. It was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially today when you look at some of the other events that took place during the course of the Olympics, you have these people bad-mouthing the country.
Right.
While they're collecting their trophies and their medals for playing for the country or representing the country.
Correct.
I mean, that's not the platform that you do that on. I'm sorry. I'm
with you 110% on that. I said that many times that they had no business saying what they said. They need to be humble and say that I'm proud to represent the country, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm lucky to be here. It's an event of a lifetime, and for me to be here and compete at this level.
Absolutely. So, James, where can we go to find out more about you and about your work, sir?
Well, there's so much out there. I mean, YouTube, you can certainly find me simply by putting my name in, James Porfido, or the name of the book, Unequal Justice, or Spotify. I do have a social media platform. I have to confess I'm not that great with it. Justice, I think it's Justice with Porfido or Porfido Writes. Porfido Writes. That's on Instagram, I believe. And I have a website associated with the book. It's www.unequal-justice.com. And certainly my name, Porfido Law, is an easy way to find me, www.porfidolaw.com. And I'm so happy that you invited me.
Well, thank you, sir. I do appreciate it. And this was, again, a great conversation. And folks, you need to check out his stuff. And I will be looking to follow you on the social media stuff. So keep an eye out for Joe Rooz somewhere along the way. All right. Do you want to hang out backstage for a minute? All right. Do you want to hang out backstage for a minute so I can close everything up and say our goodbyes? All right. All right. James Porfido, folks, check him out. Great stuff, man. Great conversation. Again, thank you very much, sir. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Am I going to get a bill? Am I going to get a bill for this or what?
No bill. This is free of charge.
Pro bono. There we go. Outstanding. All right. I'll see you in a second. All right. All right, James Porfido, man, what a great conversation, man. I'm telling you, we are another home run here. This is just fantastic. All right, folks, listen, tax season's upon us, as always, and even though you know my position that taxation is theft, there are people out there that try to help you through this whole painful process, and I want to tell you about one of them, Diamond Dynasty Tax Group Legacy. They are a local business here in Eagle Pass, but you don't have to be in Eagle Pass to use their services. They can help you out wherever you are. So you can give them a call at 830-867-7106. It's 830-867-7106 for Diamond Dynasty Tax Group Legacy. Now, I tell you all the time, when we purchased the asylum and we built the studio, we did all the renovations here, I had a folder of receipts about yay big, and they did a fantastic job in getting through all that stuff, minimizing all the stress, maximizing the return. Really did appreciate the work they did. So when they asked if I would mention them on the show, I was very happy to do that. So check them out. Diamond Dynasty Tax Group Legacy, 830-867-7106, 830-867-7106. All right. Now, folks, shout-outs, of course, as always, to our producers, executive producer Wayne Rankin, Rosanna Rankin, executive producer Carolina Jimenez, executive producer Marissa Lee, and, of course, the inestimable Anonymous Angela. We really do appreciate all the work that they put into the show. These folks donate their time, their talent, their treasure. We call it the 3 T's, and you could do the same thing as well. If you'd like to find out more about how you can help support the show, just take a look at our website, joerooz.com/support, joerooz.com/support. You'll see all the different ways you can help us out, from a one-time donation in any amount, a recurring donation in any amount, or if you want to sign up to be a producer of the show. Associate producer is $17.76 a month. Producer is $18.36 a month. And then $25 a month gets you executive producer. You get all the shout-outs on every show by name. We throw your name out there. You get included in all of our show notes. You get included in all the emails that go out there, because as producers of the show and donating your time, your talent, your treasure, you're helping us put all this stuff together. You are helping to produce the show. The other added benefit that the executive producer gets is they get to come on the show with us. So that's always fun. That's why we do our segments with Wayne, it's always a trip doing a segment with Wayne. He's a character. We love him, and we appreciate him taking the time to do it. So you can do that too. You can come on the show right now. Wayne is the only one with the to do it. So come on board. We would love to have you, and it would be just a lot of fun. So take a look at it. If you can help us, if you have the means to do it, we would really, really appreciate it. All right, folks, justice. It's one of those words that we all grow up believing in. We're taught that the system is fair, that the truth wins, and the facts matter. But tonight's conversation reminds us that justice isn't automatic. It's fought for. It depends on people, on courage, on preparation, on who stands in that courtroom and how they're willing to fight for truth. Now, whether you agree or disagree with everything that we talked about tonight, one thing is absolutely for sure. Understanding how the system works is the first step in protecting yourself, your rights, and your future. Because justice doesn't belong just in a courtroom. It belongs to every citizen who is willing to seek the truth. All right. And with that said, folks, I do believe I am done with you for tonight. So don't forget to head over to the website, joerooz.com. Let us know what you think, and look forward to hearing from you. And we will see you on Friday. Don't forget, make Texas independent again. Go podcasting, keep a steady stride, and keep talking. We'll see you Friday night. Have a good night, folks.